Two people can make the exact same financial decision, backed by the exact same numbers, and one of them will look completely reasonable, while the other looks reckless. Same math, same market, completely different outcome, and completely different judgment attached to it. That gap is the entire subject of a book that argues something most financial advice quietly ignores. Money isn't really governed by spreadsheets. It's governed by psychology. That book is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Housel's core argument is that doing well with money has very little to do with how smart you are, and a great deal to do with how you behave. And behavior is shaped by things far messier than formulas. Things like ego, fear, pride, and the specific, unrepeatable experiences that taught each of us what money actually means. This is why he insists financial success is a soft skill, not a hard one, and why the book is built almost entirely around short, individual stories rather than models or equations. The first idea Housel builds the whole book on is a simple, humbling observation. No one is crazy. Every financial decision that looks bizarre or irrational from the outside made complete sense to the person who made it, given their own unique experience of the world. Someone who lived through a specific economic shock in their 20s will carry a permanently different relationship with risk than someone who came of age during a period of stability, even if both of them are looking at the exact same set of facts today. Your own personal history with money, formed early and rarely examined consciously, ends up shaping decisions decades later in ways that feel entirely rational from the inside, even when they look inexplicable to someone whose formative experiences were completely different. Housel's point isn't that everyone is equally right. It's that judging someone else's financial choices without understanding the specific experiences that produced them is judging with incomplete information. From there, the book turns to a distinction most people conflate without realizing it: luck and risk. Housel argues that outcomes in the financial world are shaped constantly by forces entirely outside anyone's control, and that both dramatic success and dramatic failure are frequently the product of luck or risk playing out, rather than pure skill or pure recklessness. The trouble is that luck and risk are almost invisible in the moment. We can measure a person's effort and their strategy. We can't measure the countless outside variables that push the outcome one way or the other. This leads to a specific common error: celebrating successful outcomes as pure proof of skill, while writing off failed outcomes as pure proof of poor judgment, when in both cases, forces well beyond the individual's actual decisions were doing a substantial share of the real work. Housel's suggestion is to judge decisions with real humility, focusing more on broad patterns of sound behavior than on any single outcome, since a single outcome can easily be shaped far more by luck or risk than by the quality of the decision itself. This leads naturally into one of the book's sharpest, most memorable ideas, something Housel calls never enough. No matter how much money a person accumulates, there's a persistent psychological trap where the goalposts for what would feel like enough keep quietly moving further away. The specific danger here isn't ambition itself. It's the tendency to take a genuinely reasonable starting position and, in pursuit of more, risk something essential: security, relationships, reputation, in exchange for something you don't actually need. Housel points to this as one of the most common ways financially successful people undo their own success, not through bad luck, but through an inability to recognize the exact point at which they already had enough and a refusal to stop reaching past it. Guarding against that trap requires a very specific kind of patience. And this brings the book to what might be its most quietly profound idea: the sheer, underappreciated power of compounding over long stretches of time. Housel is direct that an enormous share of extraordinary long-term financial outcomes isn't the product of extraordinary annual returns. It's the product of very good ordinary returns, sustained without interruption over an unusually long period. The specific insight he draws out is that most people dramatically underestimate how much of a large financial outcome comes, not from the rate of growth, but simply from the duration over which that growth was allowed to continue uninterrupted. This reframes what actually matters most in building wealth. It's less about finding some clever, high-return strategy and much more about finding a reasonable strategy you can actually stick with, without interruption, for decades, because the interruption itself, more than the specific rate of return, is often what quietly destroys the compounding that would have otherwise done the heavy lifting. That need for uninterrupted patience connects directly to a distinction Housel draws that reframes how most people think about financial strategy altogether. The skills required to get wealthy are not the same skills required to stay wealthy. Getting money often requires optimism, confidence, and a real willingness to take risk, putting yourself out into uncertain, unproven territory in pursuit of growth. Staying wealthy requires something almost the opposite: humility, a persistent fear of losing what you've built, and a genuine respect for how much of your success may have depended on luck rather than pure skill, since that same luck could just as easily reverse. Housel argues that many financial disasters happen precisely because someone who built wealth through aggressive risk-taking never adjusted their approach once they had something significant to actually protect. Carrying the same appetite for risk forward long after the priority should have shifted from growth toward preservation. This is where Housel introduces the practical concept of room for error, treating it not as pessimism, but as a genuinely rational response to how unpredictable the future actually is. Because history is full of events nobody saw coming, and the future will almost certainly contain surprises just as unprecedented. Planning around a single expected outcome is fragile by design. He points out that the most damaging financial surprises are rarely the ones anyone spent time worrying about in advance, precisely because the ones people worry about tend to get planned for, while the truly costly surprises are, by definition, the ones nobody thought to prepare for at all. Building in a deliberate margin, more savings than seems strictly necessary, less debt than could technically be afforded, isn't a failure of optimism. It's an acknowledgement that a plan which only works if everything goes roughly as expected is a plan that hasn't accounted for how often things don't. Underneath nearly all of these ideas sits a claim Housel treats as one of the most overlooked truths in personal finance. The specific behavior of saving money matters more than almost any other single factor in building long-term wealth, more than income level, and more than the details of any particular investment strategy. Critically, he argues that saving doesn't require a specific goal attached to it, a particular purchase or a defined target you're saving toward. The value of savings, in his framing, comes specifically from the flexibility and optionality it creates, the ability to absorb an unexpected setback or seize an unexpected opportunity without being forced into a decision by financial desperation. A savings rate built simply on the general principle that flexibility itself has value, independent of any specific future purchase, tends to produce far more durable financial security than saving that's only ever aimed at one predetermined goal. All of this points toward what Housel identifies as the single most valuable thing money can actually buy. More valuable than any specific possession or luxury, control over your own time. He calls this the ability to wake up and decide what to do with your day on your own terms, without that decision being dictated by financial necessity. The highest dividend money pays, one that outranks nearly every other benefit typically associated with wealth. This reframes the entire purpose of accumulating money in the first place. It was never really about the specific things it could purchase. It was about the independence it could provide, the ability to say no to situations you don't want to be in, and yes to the ones you genuinely value, without your hand being forced by circumstance. Housel also devotes real attention to a statistical pattern he found running through investing and business alike, something he calls tails you win. A small number of events or decisions tend to account for the overwhelming majority of results, while the vast bulk of individual attempts contribute comparatively little, and many fail outright. This holds true across an entire investment portfolio, where a small handful of exceptional holdings can end up responsible for nearly all of the portfolio's long-term gains, even while a large share of the other individual investments underperform or lose money entirely. It also holds true in business and even personal decision-making more broadly, where a small number of choices, tried and pursued despite the likelihood that most wouldn't work out, end up mattering far more than the many smaller decisions surrounding them. Housel's point is that this pattern of concentrated outcomes is normal, not a sign of poor strategy. Expecting every individual decision or investment to succeed misunderstands how the actual math of long-term compounding works, since it's the rare, outsized winners that carry the majority of the weight, while the rest simply need to avoid doing catastrophic damage in the meantime. There's a related idea Housel explores through what he calls the man-in-the-car paradox, built around a simple but revealing observation. When you see someone driving an expensive car, admiration for the car doesn't usually translate into admiration for the driver specifically. More often, the onlooker is simply imagining themselves behind the wheel of that same car, using the driver as a prop for their own daydream, rather than genuinely being impressed by the person. This exposes a quiet flaw in using visible spending as a strategy for earning respect or admiration from other people, since the very display meant to generate admiration usually just becomes something other people project their own wants onto, largely disconnected from any actual regard for the spender. Housel connects this directly to a broader definition of wealth itself. What people typically display, cars, homes, vacations, isn't wealth. It's the visible spending of income, and it can just as easily coexist with very little actual financial security underneath it. Real wealth, in his framing, is largely invisible by definition, made up of the assets not spent, the income not yet converted into visible possessions, sitting quietly as savings and investments precisely because it was never spent trying to prove anything to anyone else. Housel closes much of this reasoning with a final, practical corrective to how financial advice typically gets framed. The idea that a good financial decision doesn't need to be coldly, mathematically optimal to actually be a good decision. It needs to be reasonable enough that the person making it can actually stick with it consistently for a long time, even through periods of doubt or market stress. A theoretically optimal strategy that a person abandons out of fear during a downturn produces worse real-world results than a merely reasonable strategy the same person can actually maintain without wavering. Housel argues that personal comfort and emotional sustainability are not distractions from sound financial planning. They're a legitimate part of what makes a plan actually work in practice. Since the best strategy on paper is worthless the moment real behavior deviates from it under pressure. Every idea in this book, laid side by side, circles back to the same underlying claim. Financial success was never primarily a math problem, solvable through better formulas or more sophisticated strategy. It's a behavior problem shaped by ego, fear, patience, and the specific personal history each of us carries into every decision we make about money. The people who do well over the long run usually aren't the ones with the highest intelligence or the most sophisticated strategy. They're the ones who found a reasonable approach they could actually sustain without interruption through decades of a future that was never going to unfold exactly as expected. Maybe the real lesson this book leaves behind isn't a specific rule to follow or a particular strategy to copy from someone else's story. It's a quieter suggestion to notice how much of your own relationship with money was shaped long before you ever consciously chose it, and to build a plan sturdy enough and reasonable enough to actually keep, to survive contact with a future that has never once gone exactly according to anyone's plan.